The old lighthouse keeper, Elias Thorne, had seen things. Not just the churn and gray of the North Sea or the predictable dance of the constellations, but things that clung to the edges of perception, whispers from the depths that threatened to pull reason under. For 40 years, he'd manned the Black Rock Lighthouse, a solitary sentinel against the unforgiving sea. His companion was the wind, his confidant the ceaseless roar of the waves, and his lullaby the creaking groan of the ancient iron structure. He was a man carved by salt and solitude, his face a roadmap of wrinkles etched by sun, wind, and unspoken anxieties. It began, as most disquieting things do, subtly. A faint rhythmic tapping against the thick glass of the lantern room, usually attributed to driftwood or errant seabirds. But this tapping was too regular, too deliberate. Elias, a man who valued routine above all else, found himself increasingly unsettled. He traced the sound with his gaze, his ancient eyes, accustomed to piercing the fog, straining against the twilight gloom. Nothing. Yet the tapping persisted, sometimes on the west-facing pane, sometimes on the east, as if whatever made it was circling, testing the defenses of his lonely perch. He started sleeping with a heavy brass sextant by his bedside, a foolish comfort perhaps, but a tangible one. Then came the whispers, not the intelligible words of men, but a sibilant murmur that seemed to weave itself into the wind's howl. It was a language Elias couldn't place, ancient and guttural, carrying a chilling resonance that bypassed his ears and vibrated in his very bones. He tried to dismiss it as the sea's lament, the cries of gulls distorted by the wind, but the whispers had a distinct presence, a malevolent curiosity that prickled the back of his neck. He found himself jumping at shadows, his sleep fractured by dreams of vast ink-black voids and the chilling sensation of being watched by countless unseen eyes. He began to document these anomalies in his logbook, the familiar, measured script growing increasingly erratic, interspersed with hastily scrawled questions and frantic sketches of impossible shapes. He wrote of the tapping, of the whispers, and of the strange phosphorescence that sometimes bloomed on the waves below, not the gentle glow of bioluminescence, but a sickly, pulsating light that seemed to emanate from a great depth. He described a scent, too, one that occasionally wafted up from the sea, a cloying, metallic odor mingled with the damp earthiness of a forgotten grave. One particularly stormy night, the tempest raging with a ferocity Elias hadn't witnessed in years, the tapping escalated to a frantic pounding. It wasn't just on the glass anymore, it reverberated through the very foundations of the lighthouse. The whispers coalesced into a chilling chorus, a cacophony of ancient, inhuman voices that seemed to promise oblivion. Elias, his heart hammering against his ribs, climbed to the lantern room, the wind tearing at his oilskins. He swung his lamp, its beam cutting through the driving rain and spray. And then he saw it. Not a bird, not driftwood, but something else. A colossal, amorphous shape, dimly illuminated by the lighthouse beam, clawing at the tower's base. It was like a mountain of writhing, translucent flesh, studded with 1,000 pale, unblinking eyes that reflected the light with an unnerving intelligence. Tentacles, thick as ancient oak trees, thrashed against the rocks, their suckers glistening like ravenous mouths. Elias felt a primal terror seize him, a fear so profound it threatened to shatter his sanity. This was no creature of the known world, no beast of myth he'd ever read about. This was something older, something dredged from an abyss forgotten by time. He retreated, his breath catching in his throat, and stumbled back to his small living quarters, the pounding on the tower growing more insistent. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that he was the last. guardian of a secret that had slumbered beneath the waves, a secret that was now waking, drawn by his solitary beacon. The logbook, still open on his desk, bore witness to his descent into the uncanny. He flipped through its pages, his gaze falling on a sketch, crude but terrifyingly accurate, of the behemoth he had seen. He then turned to a section he had only recently begun to fill, a desperate attempt to catalog the nightmares that were becoming reality. He called them the forgotten species. The first he described as the gloom weaver. He had glimpsed it only once, in the deepest twilight, a creature of shadow and mist that drifted just beneath the surface of the water, its form indistinct, like smoke coalesced. It possessed a single colossal eye, the size of a dinner plate, that pulsed with a faint internal luminescence, a sickly yellow that promised utter desolation. It moved without disturbing the water, a phantom of the deep, and Elias suspected its purpose was not to hunt, but to observe, to absorb the ambient despair of lost souls and shipwrecked sailors. Its presence left behind a lingering chill, a pervasive sense of hopelessness that clung to the air for days. He had sketched it as a swirling vortex of darkness, punctuated by that single dreadful eye. The second was the chitinous chorus. This was the source of the whispers, he was sure of it. It dwelled in the deepest trenches, a colony of creatures that communicated through resonant vibrations, their chitinous exoskeletons clicking and grinding against each other to produce a symphony of dread. Elias imagined them as vast, segmented beings, like monstrous centipedes made of polished obsidian, their myriad legs scuttling across the ocean floor. Their collective voice, amplified by the crushing pressure of the deep, could allegedly drive men to madness, its insidious melody weaving through the subconscious and planting seeds of despair and paranoia. He had tried to capture their sound in his log, describing it as a low, guttural hum punctuated by sharp metallic clicks, a sound that felt both alien and eerily familiar, as if it tapped into some forgotten primal fear. The third was the abyssal bloom. This was the source of the strange phosphorescence. It was not a single creature, but a vast, sessile organism, rooted to the seabed in the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean. It resembled a grotesque bioluminescent flower, its petals formed from glowing gelatinous membranes that pulsed with an unholy light. Elias theorized that these blooms fed on geothermal energy and the decaying remnants of creatures that fell from above, their sickly glow acting as a lure, attracting smaller, unsuspecting prey into their gelatinous embrace. The scent Elias had detected, that cloying metallic aroma, was likely the effluvium of these monstrous botanical horrors, a perfume of death and decay that hinted at their insatiable hunger. He had drawn it as a tangled mass of glowing tendrils, emanating a light that seemed to suck the warmth from the surrounding water. The fourth Elias dared to call the stone siren. He had only ever seen its effects, not the creature itself. Sailors spoke of a melodic hum that would emanate from certain submerged rock formations, a song so beautiful and alluring that it drew ships to their doom, smashing them against unseen reefs. Elias believed this was no natural phenomenon, but the call of a creature that could manipulate sound, perhaps a being with crystalline vocal cords that resonated with the very frequencies of the earth. It was said to have a body like polished granite, its form perfectly camouflaged against the seabed, waiting patiently for its next offering. Its song, he imagined, was a deceptive lullaby, a promise of peace that led only to eternal slumber. He had drawn a rough outline of a jagged rock, with faint wavy lines emanating from it, representing the insidious song. And the fifth, the one that had inspired the frantic pounding, the creature that now clawed at his lighthouse, Elias termed the Kraken's regret. He believed this was not a single species, but a lament, a manifestation of ancient primordial entities that had been driven into the deepest parts of the ocean by the rise of more modern life. They were beings of pure, untamed power, their forms fluid and adaptable, capable of shifting between solid and ethereal states. The Kraken of legend was but a pale imitation of these true titans of the abyss. Their regret was not sorrow, but a primal rage, a deep-seated resentment towards the surface world that had forgotten them, that had left them to fester in the crushing darkness. Their tapping was a demand to be remembered, their pounding a declaration of their reawakening. He had filled pages with abstract shapes, trying to capture the sheer, overwhelming scale and alien nature of the beast he had witnessed. A chaotic swirl of tentacles and eyes that defied any earthly geometry. The logbook lay open, the last entry a jumble of desperate pleas and fragmented descriptions. Elias, his hands trembling, knew his time was short. The pounding had intensified, the glass of the lantern room groaning under the relentless assault. He could hear the grinding of stone, the tearing of metal. The whispers were no longer distant murmurs, but a deafening roar, 1,000 voices screaming his name, or perhaps his impending doom. He looked out at the raging sea, the waves like monstrous fists battering the black rock. He saw the sickly, pulsating light of the abyssal bloom breaking through the inky blackness, and for a fleeting moment he imagined the stone siren's song, a mournful melody lost in the storm's fury. He knew that he, Elias Thorne, the solitary keeper of the light, had become a nexus, a bridge between the forgotten depths and the world above. He had inadvertently called them forth, not with a summons, but with his mere existence, his persistent, unwavering light in the vast darkness. The ancient tower shuddered, a deep crack appearing in the thick glass of the lantern room. Elias gripped the sextant, its cold metal a small comfort against the encroaching dread. He heard a sound, not of wood or metal, but of something vast and wet and impossibly strong, beginning to pry open the main door of the lighthouse. The air grew heavy, thick with that unearthly metallic scent. He could feel the pressure change, not of the storm, but of something ancient and immense pressing in. His final act was not of defiance. He reached for the lamp, the heart of his lighthouse, its steady beam a beacon of hope for sailors. But now he understood that same steady beam had been a beacon for something else entirely. He looked at the logbook, at his frantic sketches of creatures that should have remained lost to the abyss. He knew the world was not ready for this revelation. As the door gave way with a sound like the earth splitting open, Elias closed his eyes. He did not scream. He did not pray. He simply waited, a lone sentinel at the edge of the known world, for the forgotten species to reclaim their dominion, to finally extinguish the light that had dared to trespass upon their ancient slumbering realm. The last thing he felt was the overwhelming presence of countless unblinking eyes, and the chilling certainty that he was no longer Elias Thorne, lighthouse keeper, but merely another lost soul, swallowed by the Kraken's regret. The sea roared, the wind wailed, and the Black Rock Lighthouse, for the first time in 40 years, fell silent.